Let's talk about Rally X, released in 1980, the same year as Pac-Man, actually. Both of these games had their 45th anniversaries last year, which is interesting because both Pac-Man and Rally X have a lot of similarities to one another, specifically in terms of being a maze game. It's a game where you play as a race car driver in a blue race car, and you race around a maze-like field while being chased down by red race cars. The field also has these large rocks as obstacles, other than the red cars, which means you could find yourself dead-ended after a wrong turn. This of course means that you could be trapped by 2 or more red cars, which could have different behaviors like being faster than you or using flanking maneuvers. Red cars can run into one another, but that only stuns them for a quick second before they get back on track. They can run into rocks as well, and they also have the same effect. Hello, Future CD here. I wanted to correct that statement. Red cars spin out of control when they run into rocks, which leaves them incapacitated for about 3 or 4 seconds. This is not what happens when they run into each other, as they do a quick stop before they continue driving. You will notice all of these things within the gameplay. That being said, back to the video. The blue car has a smoke screen ability. This is an evasive maneuver that keeps red cars from gaining up on you, causing them to spin out of control. But this, of course, has a limit, as your blue car has a fuel tank that essentially acts as your time limit. Not that your car is going to self-destruct or anything, but if you run out of fuel, you will lose all of your speed, which makes you very easy prey for the red cars. So unless you are very close to the last flag, you are cooked. These red cars are absolutely no joke. These guys are absolutely out for blood. Like, this is not even your playground, this is their playground. From the moment you start the game, you're essentially in the doghouse, or the dog pound, and you are the cat. Of course, the game gets more difficult after each round, as after each passing round, one more red car is added to the field. It's honestly a really challenging game. If you're not calm and you get nervous really easily, you're going to lose. The first round starts with 3 red cars chasing after you, and it gradually picks up from there, which means that the game starts off difficult enough to where you can easily die on the first round. A bad controller can also be a contributing factor to making you suck really bad at the game. One thing I forgot to mention is that the game gives you a mini-map. Since the camera follows you everywhere you go, you're not going to have much time to see where the red cars are. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to the mini-map from time to time to get an idea of where the red cars are so you won't accidentally get ambushed, which can definitely be easier said than done. The map also shows you where all the flags are so you don't get lost, but at the same time you really don't have time to get lost. Other than that, the mini-map is not a detailed layout. You still have to look exactly where you're going so you don't run into any walls, take any wrong turns, or worse, run into rocks because those are not on the map. This game can almost feel like a horror game with the way some of these red cars can end up moving. And that's aside from the fact that one red car is added to the track after each round. I remember when I first played this as a kid on Namco Museum for Game Boy Advance. Okay, Future CD here. I need to make another correction. Rally X was not on Namco Museum for Game Boy Advance. It wasn't even on Namco Museum for PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. However, it was on Namco Museum 50th Anniversary, which is a compilation that I actually never owned. So this means that my first exposure to Rally X was either through 2 different ways. One way is through an arcade cabinet that used to be at an allergy doctor that I used to go to as a kid. Or 2, one of those Namco plug-and-play TV games that they used to have back in the day. So completely disregard what I said about Rally X being on Namco Museum for Game Boy Advance, because it was not there. Back to the video. And every time I would try playing the game, I don't think I played it for more than 2 minutes, just because of how difficult the game was and how I was always getting banged by the red cars. And would always end up just playing New Rally X instead because the game was easier. Speaking of which, let's talk about New Rally X for a little bit. New Rally X is Rally X with an amended difficulty to make it slightly more accessible for all players. Or in simpler terms, is Rally X but easier. Some minor changes were made to the game, such as new music and slightly updated graphics. The vehicles themselves also got a slightly visual makeup. You could say that New Rally X is the better version of the game, but it's up to the players to decide that. I think players should definitely try out both versions of the game to see which version of the game they like. If you want the more original and more challenging experience from the jump, you play Rally X. If you want the game to start off a bit easier and gradually get more challenging, then you play New Rally X. Most Namco compilations that include Rally X in its compilation normally also include New Rally X along with it, which makes sense because they are two versions of the same game. It's great that both versions have been preserved for people to play so that they can form their own opinions on their experiences with both games. I myself am glad that I took out the time to give Rally X, the original Rally X, more of a chance and more time to play it and make more progress than I would have if I were still a kid. Because I used to be really quick to quit the game before I could make it past the first round. Because this game is not easy, it is hard, it is intense, it's an adrenaline rush. It's a game where you have to be prepared to get ambushed and flanked. It's a game where I failed a lot, and most of those fails came from a really finicky D-pad on a controller that I was using. So when I revisited this game, I decided to use another controller with a better D-pad. And I ended up having a much better time with the game than I did over a year ago. But other than that, I don't really have much else to say about the game. It's a really fun classic, and it's one of my personal favorites in Namco's vast library of arcade classics. But anyway, that's gonna be it for this short retrospective. It is an arcade game, so you can't really expect this video to be too long. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you again in the next video. And hopefully that video comes very soon. But until then, God bless.